Welcome back. Water Polo Wednesday, impromptu episode. We felt compelled after an absolutely insane weekend of water polo, maybe the most exciting weekend of polo we've seen in our lifetimes, to bring you high level results and demystify the at large bid that has been a topic of this podcast almost every single week. Wes, talk to us about the weekend a little bit.
What a crazy weekend, Clay. Holy cow. Man, do I feel honored. This is such a privilege to experience what we just did. As you guys know, I was at UCLA for the MPSF doing the broadcast on overnight, but we were watching all the games on the computers at the desk. And so I got to see so much great water polo this weekend. Clay, you and I talked on Saturday night. We were together, and I mean, it was a water polo weekend, and what a weekend it was. First off, congratulations to all the teams who qualified. It is no small feat to win your conference tournament. You fight all year for ranking, and then you come in and you've got to win a couple of really big games. And for those of you who did, congratulations. And for those of you who didn't, keep grinding. There's, better, never best. And this weekend was as exciting as you'd ever hope for in sport, in all of sport. The parity, the uncertainty that comes with this weekend. I truly believe that this weekend will help grow the sport of water polo in an innumerable way, that people will hear about it, that the upsets will create conversation, and truly, hopefully, get more people interested in our wonderful, wonderful sport.
Yeah, 1,000%. And we've had a heck of a time watching all this come together over the season. So I think it'd be really helpful if we just break down the conferences a little bit visually.
Sure.
Wes, you've once again helped us out with some visual
Visuals.
cues for our audience and for me, frankly.
Of course. So, look, I need to start off with the Northeast Conference, and this goes out to all the Princeton parents and the players. I ran into a Princeton dad in the gym on Monday morning after we released our Princeton episode on Sunday night, and he let me know you guys were not thrilled about my choice to pick Harvard. Well, I hope it served as some motivation for you, because you did win your conference tournament. Congratulations to Princeton. I was wrong. Harvard lost to Brown, and you didn't have to play them. Didn't matter because you guys crushed anyways. Good for you. You made the tournament. We're so excited to welcome you out west here. It'll be an incredible weekend with Princeton earning that first bid into the NC2A tournament.
Yeah, very tough loss for Harvard to Brown. There's been a handful of tough losses over this weekend, and
We're going to get
very
into
good
that.
on you, Princeton. Very excited for
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah, absolutely great for Princeton and Coach Dusty Litvak. It's great to see him continue to have success there at Princeton. And so then we'll move to the Mid-Atlantic. That conference went chalk for the most part. Navy did beat George Washington, so the 5 upsetting the 4 there. But then they did lose. I'm sorry, the 3 upsetting the 2, but then they lost to Fordham in the finals. Good game. Kiefer Black had a very nice game for the Navy cadets there, and happy for Navy. It's a good season for them, but a better season for Fordham. And this story, it just keeps going, man. We're going to see Fordham now in the NC2A tournament against some big teams, and I am so excited to see what happens. I mean, this is what we've been waiting for. They didn't screw it up. Good for them, because obviously that could happen, and we saw some of that this weekend. Good on Fordham. Congratulations to those boys. We've had a great ongoing dialogue about them. They've been the story all year. Now we get to see what they're made of as they join the NCAA tournament out west in 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely a great effort from Navy, and huge congrats to Fordham. Really excited to see what's going to happen from here. Let's talk about the Big West.
Yeah, so the Big West, I took a big risk on. I picked Long Beach State to not only beat Santa Barbara, which was an upset, but also beat UCI, who was undefeated in conference play. I picked UCSD to beat Davis, who I thought would beat Fullerton, and they did. So it did end up being UCSD and Long Beach State in the final. And Long Beach did come out ahead. So we actually had the perfect bracket for that particular conference. Congratulations to Long Beach. Corbin Stanley will give you a little shout out here. You did a nice job earning many exclusions in both your semifinal match versus UCI and your final match against UCSD. Was very impressed. And of course, Bennett Axline, who was a guest on the show, 7 drawn exclusions in the final. And just tough for UCSD to drop that game. They had opportunities, but Long Beach prevailed, the better team today, and that's all that really matters. Congratulations to the Long Beach State team and Gavin Arroyo, a good friend of ours. It's a great to see you win. What a year for him. He wins a bronze medal as a coach and now a Big West Conference championship, man. I mean, it's got to be exciting, right? Like, I know that Big West isn't a bronze medal, but I still think he's probably pretty jacked up about it.
Absolutely. Congrats to Gavin and the Long Beach guys. It's not been a straight shot for the season, but clearly peaking at the right time. So the fighting and work all year long has paid off. What about the WWPA?
Yeah, so WWPA Salem beats Concordia. They'll get the 8th seed in the NC2A. We don't know much about the NC2A seedings, but we do know that Salem will get that 8th seed as the WWPA representative. Congratulations to Salem. We haven't covered them much this year, but they did a nice job at 12-11 victory in the final against Concordia. Concordia, historically, a pretty good team.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
What about the WCC?
So the WCC, Clay, and this is where things get interesting. Now, if you were to ask me what's the least likely scenario of what would occur, it occurred. Not just in this conference, but in other conferences too. So Long Beach was least likely. Like, that was not a likely thing, a 5 seed winning, right? The WCC, remember, UOP went undefeated in conference play. So UCI went undefeated in conference play, and they lost to Long Beach. The WCC got completely upended. So
Yeah,
Pepperdine, after almost losing to LMU in their first round, did lose to San Jose State in the semifinal, which we did not think would happen. Good for San Jose State. Congratulations to Gabor
definitely great for
Sarushi,
them. Yep.
Bense Sabo, and that team there. Samu Birosh as well, a good friend of ours. And they advanced to the final. Cal Baptist, CBU, who's been on the rise. Coach Rosa was on the show. Coach Lowry, one of our good friends, beats UOP at UOP.
Bonkers.
And you're going, did that just happen? And I mean, I'm speechless. We couldn't believe it. We were watching it at the desk at MPSF, and in between each quarter and during the broadcast, people are feeding me updates on what's going on. And I'm just like having a hard time staying focused. It was really unbelievable that they were able to. I'm sorry. I mean, they beat UOP, who only had 1 loss on the season going into this, to Fordham, who's a very good team. UOP had cleaned their clock earlier this year. Great for CBU to beat
Yeah,
UOP. And then they go on and they manhandled the San Jose State Spartans. CBU just earned their very first NC2A bid that wasn't a COVID season.
yeah.
Congratulations, guys.
Huge,
Zach
huge.
Lowry, Coach Rosa, Touring Stanley. So you're going to have Corbin Stanley and Touring Stanley in the NC2A tournament going at it together. That family, what genetics that is. Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
I've got goosebumps. This was,
yeah.
who saw this coming? We were
Nope.
way off. We had UOP and
CBU
Pep in the
did.
final. We didn't
CBU
even
saw
get
it
one
coming.
of 2 right.
it's this is amazing. And again, huge congrats to Coach Rosa and Lowry and the CBU boys. Incredible tournament for them. I was at lunch with Johnny Latero and Eric Carnahan today, and they're definitely stoked for you guys. And just shocking for UOP, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about them all season as well. So that leads us into now this at-large bid
Well, not
conversation.
quite the at
We're
large,
not
right?
we're
Now,
not
the at
quite yet.
large bid
All
will be
right. So,
influenced by a
so,
couple
so
of
well,
things.
how does
But
it set up the at-large bid? Well, with the MPSF, right?
with the
So,
MPSF, so something
yeah,
I want to call out here. All right, there are 6 guaranteed berths. You win your conference. Of the 6, 3 were upsets. 50% of the conferences did not go chalk, meaning the first place team didn't win.
yeah,
So the 6th and final conference, UCLA lost to USC in the final. I about had a heart attack announcing this game. The play-by-play, this game was intense. It was the highest level, most beautiful water polo game I have ever seen in my life. USC played like the team we knew they could be, the team we have been waiting to see all year. We saw these names on this roster to start the year, Clay, and you and I said USC and UCLA all day long. We didn't think anybody could touch them, and it took USC a little bit longer, but I talked to Coach Buich, who, by the way, did a fabulous job coaching that final because Coach Marco Pintaric had a red card in their overtime win versus Stanford, so he
Okay.
couldn't coach or be on the deck with them. Coach Buich said to me, it's better to win the last two games of the season than the first. And he was dead on. And congratulations to USC. You played out of your freaking mind. And I'll tell you what, I think there's more there. I think they've got more in them. And Coach Pintaric comes up to me before the game. Okay. And it's hyped up, guys. It is loud. It is crowded at the Speaker Aquatic Center. And Coach Pintaric, we talked about this last time when they were playing Cal and I was on the deck with him. And he was kind of like, remember that anxiety, that edge, you called it? It was like edgy, right? Man, his eyes, his pupils were like, he was ready to go. And you felt it in him again. Okay. And it was like, I love this guy. I love this guy. He comes up to me and he's fired up and says, nobody knows how good my guys are. But now the world's about to find out because we're going to go beat UCLA. This guy's not even going to be on the deck for the game. And he is amped up. And I had asked him, what about the at-large bids? What do you think is going to happen? He goes, I'm not worried about that. Nobody knows how good my guys are, but the world's about to find out because we're going to beat UCLA. And I mean, look, I can appreciate the perspective, but UCLA had only lost one game all year. They've got 2 Olympic bronze medalists. And man, they freaking took it to them. I mean, they were up 4 goals on UCLA at one point at halftime, Clay. So great work by USC. They were everything we hoped they could be. They were everything we thought they could be. And I do believe there's more in the tank for these guys. They had a rough match against Stanford overtime, right? Pintaric gets tossed. You thought maybe they'd come out a little lackluster and slower, but instead it was UCLA. They got punched in the mouth. And USC, Robert Duarte, Carson Kranz, Bronkovich had a very good game. Max Miller was
starting off.
outstanding. Man, the guys came up big. Jack Vort had a great weekend, and
Yep.
Bernardo Hertzer was the goalie of the tournament. No question about it.
Yeah.
They played complete water polo, both ends of the pool. It was an honor. It was a privilege to watch. I love watching great water polo, and man, USC produced something and it just didn't disappoint. And so these are your 6 conference champions that will get their guaranteed bids. And congratulations, USC, Coach Marco Pintaric, Ivan Bujic, Matt Meyer, the second assistant there. I would love to play for a guy like Marco Pintaric. He was so juiced up. He got me juiced up, which you can imagine I was already pretty amped up. Unreal performance. And we're going to break down that win later this week as we kind of we'll do like a weekend recap, our normal Water Polo Wednesday. And so we'll go deeper into that win. But congratulations to all 6 of these teams. And for those of you who could just qualified for the NC2A tournament.
Yeah, incredible performance by all teams. Again, of course, USC came out on top, but still stellar performance from UCLA all season long, even through that tournament, which again brings us to at-large bids.
Yeah. There's 2 at-large
There's 2
bids.
at-large
Okay.
bids.
Yeah. Now, UCLA gets one. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I didn't transition this in because UCLA definitely gets one. We talked about this prior to the tournament. We thought UCLA might drop this MPSF tournament. USC's won it 3 times in a row, believe it or not, I think. I have to go back and check that. That may not be right. But anyway, they may have won it 3 times. I think I saw a 3-time MPSF, whatever.
Yeah.
Said 3-peat, but I don't know. I think Cal won it one year, but I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. So UCLA gets it. They get they're the 1 seed going into this tournament. They've been the best team all year. They 21-1 record. That's fabulous, right? So they're going to get the 1 seed going in, even as an at-large, even though they didn't win their conference tournament. I would imagine they're going to get the 1 seed. We've seen this before. We broke it down last week and in the MPSF breakdown. So UCLA is in. And then the question becomes, who gets the other one? You see, when UOP lost, okay, it set things into a wild whirl And when we talked about the least likely scenario, it just happened with UOP losing and UCLA not winning their conference. And
And
so what
USC winning.
happens and USC winning? And we talked about this with the Coach Flax. There was really only one scenario, a minuscule percentage of this happening. I don't have the exact percentage in front of me, but we thought this is very, very unlikely. And then it happened. I guess there's always a non-zero chance. And so it comes down to UOP and Stanford. Now, I want to demystify this, Clay, because this has been the topic of conversation all year. The scheduling. Pacific didn't play any MPSF teams. MPSF teams didn't play Pacific or Fordham. I don't care whose fault it was. The objective of the committee is to go through the criteria of the at-large bid, which we're going to break down here, and determine who gets awarded it. I want to keep this in mind. I believe both of these teams deserve to be in the NC2A tournament. There's no opinion being thrown out here. This is not bias or influence. These are both great teams. Dash McFarland, Chase McFarland, Riley Pittman, Jackson Painter, Wes Temkin, Soren Jensen, Ethan Parrish. Those guys are great. Baton Below, I thought, was great. On Pacific side, Mihailo Vukovic, Royal D'Souza, Jeremy Cote. They got Bay Fontaine in the goal with Stefan Vovic and Gil Gavishi. My goodness. I mean, these two rosters are loaded with talent. Are they both top 8 teams? Absolutely. But it's not how it works. You don't pick the top 8 teams. There's criteria. So just like UCI was the best team in the Big West all year, right? And UCLA was the best team in the MPSF all year. Well, they didn't win their tournament, so they didn't get guaranteed bids. And UCI is now out for sure. They don't qualify for an at-large with their schedule and losses and so on and so forth. All right? So it comes down to Pacific and Stanford. These are the bubble teams, if you will. And in every sport, this happens. In most sports, you can't play everybody. Like in basketball, not everybody plays everybody. And so it's hard because there's not always a head-to-head matchup. I'd love to see this decided in a pool. If I had my druthers, they'd play it off. You play it off, definitely. And the winner gets the 5 or something like this, right? Yes. The winner gets the 4 or the 5. You play it off. We'll go from there. That's what I think should happen when in these scenarios. But that's not the case this year. Right. Won't be the case this year. So there's a committee of, I think, 7 or 8 people. I had the list of who's on it. I'm not going to review that, but I am going to review the criteria. Okay. And again, the objective here is to stay objective and not emotional. There's no transitive property of, well, Stanford beat UCLA. Well, yeah, but then they lost to Cal, and then Cal lost to UCI, and UCI lost to CBU. So does that mean that Stanford is worse than Cal? It doesn't work like that. All right. So these are the criteria, the primary criteria that the evaluation committee will go through. So the first one is that's supposed to be a percentage. It's a $. It's supposed to be a percentage. You can, again, this is an ad hoc episode, so pardon our mistakes. It's supposed to be a percentage sign.
Who was most on the money? Who was on the money?
Well, okay, fair enough, right? So UOP wins this. They went 18-2 with a 90% win rate, and Stanford went 21-4, 84% win rate. So this would check the UOP box. Again, that's not about strength of schedule. This is purely just win rate. What is your win-loss record and win percentage? Right. Okay? Not about who you played. So you could play a really soft teams. Like Fordham didn't have the toughest schedule, and they went undefeated. So, okay, cool. But we've talked about this all year. You play the schedule that you get. That's all you can do is control that. Then it goes to strength of schedule. So now who you play does matter. Okay, all these statistics, everybody, are available for you, public consumption, on the NC2A website. We will share that link in our description for you to check it out. Yeah, and I think it's important that you do check it out because knowledge is power, and it'll demystify things for you so we can be objective about this criteria. Remember, this isn't necessarily who the better team is. We don't know. Going into the MPSF tournament, everybody was telling me UCLA was going to run away with it. Going into Big West, UCI was going to do it, and UOP would win the WCC. None of that happened. So this is not about who you think is better. Okay. So now strength of schedule. The strength of schedule per the NC2A website has UOP at third and Stanford at sixth. And you're sitting there and you're going, Wes, how is that possible? They play in the MPSF conference. That's right, they do. And it hurt them. You see, the MPSF has those D3 teams. And so Stanford's first round game was against a D3 team. That really hurt them.
That's why. Okay.
That's right. And
The
so
MPSF has D3. Oh, wow. Yeah.
that's
Because no
right.
one
So
else
there's
wants to be an
D3 teams.
MPSF.
And they need those D3 teams because otherwise they don't get an automatic bid. So you have to have, I think, 6 teams in your conference in order to qualify for an automatic bid. And so because they play that D3 team, yes, Stanford won, of course, but because they played that D3 team, it really hurt their strength of schedule, whereas UOP played CBU. Now, look, I know CBU is not better than Stanford, or at least I don't think they are.
It's not D3.
But it's not D3. The second thing that really hurt Stanford was losing to USC because then they played Cal, and Cal finished under 500 this year. And so if you take away the Cal moniker and you put anybody else on that, you're putting them probably at 12th or 13th. That really hurt them that they had to play Cal in that consolation game. And if you remember, when I spoke to Coach Graham, I asked, should every conference have the play out? He said they should do what they want. Now, WCC and the Big West do not have a play out. MPSF does. This also hurt Stanford.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So just by
because they
having
then
that
had
third
another
place deciding game hurt Stanford's schedule because Cal was a lower ranked team based off their record.
That's right. They were a sub 500 team, and it hurt them because their strength of schedule went down drastically because Cal had such a rough year. Okay. Tough sledding there when you're in this vaunted MPSF. Nobody thinks about it this way, but this data, again, is all available for public consumption on the NC2A website. Now, the next criteria, there's 3 we're going to breeze through here. Eligibility of student athletes, meaning their health. If you remember when Florida State got held out of the CFP, the college football playoff, that was because their quarterback shredded his knee in a play and he was no longer playing. And the committee determined that the quarterback was too influential to replace, and they wouldn't be the same team as they were all season. And so they didn't make the CFP, and there was a big outrage, but that's why it's the same criteria. So all the student athletes are healthy. So that's a wash. Head-to-head competition, they never played each other. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. They didn't play each other. That's a wash. And results versus common opponents, well, guess what? Stanford never played CBU. They also didn't play Fordham. Had they done that, this box would have gone to Stanford and not be a wash. But they didn't have any common opponents that had a differing result, meaning everybody that Pacific played, that Stanford also played, they both beat them. Mm-hmm. Okay? So easy peasy. Stanford didn't play CBU or Fordham, who beat Pacific. And then everybody else they did play that they had in common, they had the same result. Now, it's not by total goals. It's not, hey, I won by 6 and you won by 3. They don't look at it that way. They look at it objectively of, did you win the game? Doesn't matter if it even goes to overtime. Did you win the game or did you lose the game? What is the final outcome? That's it. And that's important. That's important to remember because injuries happen. You play a Friday night game and then a Saturday morning game. You may only win that Saturday morning game by 1. But if you played them Friday night, you might have won by 8. And so they don't look at the score differential. And that's also important because I hear a lot of that of like, well, so, Stanford beat this team by 6 and Pacific only beat them by 1. It's like, it doesn't matter because it's not equity.
I would love it to matter. I think margin should be a metric in this.
Well, you might, again, we're getting into your opinion now. And if it were to be, then schedules would have to be equal. And then that would go to Coach Graham's point of no 2 games in one day. Right. And no back-to-back games for that matter. Friday, Sunday, okay. Friday, Saturday, not fair. Okay, not 2 games Saturday. You'd have to then regulate schedule. We're going to get into that later next week as well. Mm-hmm. All right, so those 3 are a wash. Okay, so we're going to just wipe those 3 out. They're dead even. They're not going to factor in because they're a wash and it's basically tied. So now you go to last 10 game performance. This is key. The last 10 game performance. Stanford goes 7-3. Pacific goes 8-2. Stanford losing to USC, UCLA, and Cal. in their last 10 games. UOP losing 2. So they go 8-2, losing to Fordham and, of course, CBU in their conference championship.
Right.
Good on CBU. They lost to the eventual champion. So did Stanford. So you can't say, well, we lost to the champion. You both did. And so Pacific wins that metric 8-2 versus 7-3. Again, that's not about your strength of those last two necessarily. But if you are to factor in strength, that would be bad. We got strength of schedule, but that would be bad for Stanford because in their last 10, you had UCSD, you had Santa Clara, you had the D3 school, and you had Cal twice. And that doesn't work. That's not good for Stanford. So that's not a route you want to go down, but it doesn't matter because that's not part of the evaluation process. And then you have RPI results, meaning, and these are, again, all available on the NC2A website. The RPI results has Pacific Tigers with the second ranked RPI in the country and Stanford Cardinal with the fourth ranked RPI in the country. And thus, UOP should win by all objective metrics the at-large bid. And this is a shame because I think Stanford is a fabulous team. I have loved watching Stanford. They knocked off UCLA. I've got so many great things to say about this team. Brian Flack's a great guest of ours. In my mind, again, there should be some sort of playoff because it should be done in the water. We got to figure it out by playing each other. The NC2A for March Madness has gone to that as well. Right? There's these play-in games for some of these schools who are bubble or at large, whatever it may be. But based on this criteria, and this is pulled, the criteria I have pulled from the NC2A website and manual on how this is decided, these are the results.
Yeah.
And UOP should get the bid. Now, the committee should be done deliberating. This will be made public. It's not official. We're not the official source. It'd be cool if we were. We're just trying to demystify this process because the conversation on the pool deck was all about this at the MPSF tournament. And I'm sure at the WCC the same. In fact, I got text messages from coaches across the country wondering what I thought was going to happen. And it took me a long time to figure this out. I've been trying to figure this out for days, and I finally sat down and did all the math because now the schedules are finished, the season is completed, and I have all the data, and this is what it looks like. And so objectively, if the committee follows this criteria, then it should be UOP. Again, this isn't about what I like or what I think or who I believe is better. That's not it at all. It's criteria. This is objective and unemotional. So if the committee follows the criteria, this should be the result. There's a chance the committee doesn't follow the criteria, but that'd be like showing up to a water polo game and you being reffed and with rules you're unaware of.
Couple questions.
Sure.
One, so RPI is something that was new to us heading into this season as well that we learned about, again, thanks to Coach Graham. And RPI in and of itself is a ranking system that has its own metrics, not too dissimilar from these within the criteria of the NC2A at-large bid, right?
Yeah.
Strength of season, last 10 games, results versus top 10 teams versus, the 10 through 20. And that's pretty much like a science-based metric. You can't really argue with what that is, right? That's set in stone.
Yeah.
And like, even if one of these was off, right? Like this could have come down the line and being like, well, it's close, but Pacific has one of these criteria as an advantage, therefore they get it. And we're seeing here, it's a very one-sided conversation based off the criteria. Is there space for politics to be at play in the decision-making?
Look, we're all human, and
Sure.
I don't like, this is a different conversation. I don't like this. That we're all human. Sure, there's always going to be politics at play. I mean, Stanford is hosting this year. Could they decide to do something and with that in mind? Yeah, I mean, yeah, they could. I'm not in the room, but based on the criteria that is laid out by the NC2A to make this decision, this is technically what they're supposed to go off. Does it always happen this way? No. I mean, sometimes it's 2-2 or 3-3. And then politics probably has more of a say. This to me looks too cut and dry and would be too egregious to go the other way and say, well, Stanford's hosting, so you get it because you're hosting. At that
Right.
point, why play the regular season? Why
Yeah.
bother playing if you know you're going? I'll just get a few exhibition games in, not
Yeah.
injure my guys, and we'll just go, right? Like that doesn't make sense. So,
Yeah.
and the other thing is, I'll call out, like, look, RPI is not the only criteria here. It's just one of many. And
Of
so
course.
while
Yeah.
you could be first on RPI, what if you had a terrible schedule, or your strength of schedule could be high and your last 10 could be terrible? Like there's a reason there's so many different metrics and criteria here. Now, you might say, well, James Graham is playing the game. Yeah, he's playing within the rules. If you don't think coaches are always trying to get an edge, quite candidly, you're naive. Like if
I
you
mean, we
don't
see
think
that
there's a
just
reason that the
within the
MPSF,
game itself,
sorry,
right? Like whatever the rules of like an individual game are, like every coach will try to bend it as much as possible to an
for
advantage.
for
And why would that
sure.
exclude the criteria for an at-large bid?
Correct. Yeah, and you want consistency, because if you start living in a world where you put out these rules and nobody abides by them, then why have the rules? The other
Yeah.
thing I'll call out is, I went back and I looked at all the different MPSF tournaments that they had hosted, and people give Pacific a lot of crap for not going because they didn't want to play two games in one day. Of the last 19 MPSF tournaments, Pacific's played in 17 of them. So, like, this is one of 2 years in 19 years or whatever it is that they chose to not go. And they had a reason to not go. We showed that with the stats. And so people are all over Pacific. Oh, you didn't want to play MPSF. Look, it's not that Pacific didn't want to play MPSF or that MPSF didn't want to play Pacific. It is what it is, and we play the schedule we have. It doesn't matter why at this point. What matters are these criteria, and it'll come down to the people in the room who make this decision.
Yeah. Well, if this is the scenario, that'd be an amazing second chance for UOP, and as we said, absolutely heartbreaking for
For
Stanford
Stanford.
because we would love to see that team in the NC2A tournament as well and get another shot at it. But boy,
Yeah.
what drama! My goodness.
I do think there's some discussion for more of a play-in type game, and this brings it up because
Yes.
as parity increases, which we want, you want more opportunity to see great games.
Yeah.
And the more parity we have, the more great games we'll get, the more difficult it'll be to discern who deserves to go to the NC2A tournament. Part of the
Right.
reason that the March Madness has gotten bigger and college football playoff has gotten bigger, right? They've gone from 4 teams to, I think it's like 12 now, I want to say. I think it's like 12 teams. And I mean, this is NC2A water polo has done the same, Clay. When I was playing, there were only 4 teams that went to the NC2A tournament. It's doubled. Now it's at 8. So it's great to see this. This is a good thing that you're seeing parity. I can't sit here and tell you definitively Stanford's better than Pacific. I can't sit here and definitively tell you that Pacific is better than Stanford. I'm a big believer it should be worked out in the pool. I don't like this. I don't think anybody does. Maybe we need to reevaluate this. Maybe we need to reevaluate how the committee sets up so that there aren't politics and there aren't coaches on the committee who potentially could be influenced by having good friends in the industry. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Because you could
Maybe
say
there needs to
that
be.
if the coach that's involved in the decision, they have to sit that decision out, is my
Yeah, so the
understanding. They're on the
UOP
committee.
athletic director is on the board, on the
Yeah.
committee. So he will have to recuse himself from the discussion. He cannot be in the room, cannot be online. So he won't be part of it. And if there's Stanford has a representative, he or she won't be part of it either. Now, what I'll also say is I think this brings up a better conversation around scheduling and putting together some form of committee who does both non-coaches, who does both the NC2A objective criteria like this, but also scheduling. So we don't have coaches, because every coach is going to schedule themselves in the best way possible that gives them the best chance to make the NC2A tournament and be successful. There's bias there. You do this. Everybody would do the same. Okay. Like
Yeah.
that's surprising. And we don't blame them for that.
Yeah.
Why would we? Of course you want your program to be successful, right? It's American. You want to win. That's why we play the game. Right. And so I think that for me, I'd like personally to see more of an independent committee that sets up these schedules. And I realize there's budget things and it's a complicated process. And you'd have to sit down and get influence and understand what is UCLA's budget, what is Fordham's budget, what is
Right.
George Washington's budget, right? What does that look like? But ideally, then you could get teams to all play each other. Maybe not every year, but like maybe UOP would have to play Cal and Stanford one year in a trip, whatever, and then the next year they play USC and UCLA or something like that. So at least we get some crossover here and pollination, and then there's less of this like mysteriousness around an objective criteria. Which again, I don't love this. This makes me sad, not happy, because either way, I'm watching a good team with people I know on both of these teams that I care very deeply about as humans be disappointed in their season come to an end. And for those seniors, it's like losing by a coin flip, I feel like, and your season's over and it sucks. Again, I wanted to bring this to everybody because it demystifies it, because I think there's a lot of discussion around opinion, transitive properties, and who beat who. But these are the statistics. This is how it breaks down, and the committee will have to determine, is this the right direction to go, and then how the seating works with the NC2A.
Yeah. Well, thank you for breaking all this down for us, Wes, and creating the visuals. I hope this is helpful for everyone out there who's having the same questions as we've been having and have been able to put together the work to inform. So
Yeah.
here we go. Again, congratulations to all the coaches, the teams, the parents, the fans, everyone that's been involved to support these teams and athletes to these results. And we'll find out soon what the official word is on the second at-large bid for NC2As. And we're going to gear up for a hell of a recap of the final and other finals over
Yeah.
our next episode of Water Polo Wednesday. And boy, it's going to be fun.
Be sure to check us out later this week on Wednesday. We appreciate you hopping in on an ad hoc YouTube streaming here. Thank you, everyone that I got to meet this weekend. It was a real pleasure. And again, as Clayton said, I just want to reiterate, congratulations to everybody who qualified. It's an achievement very few people have ever been successful enough to do, and should be very proud of that. And we'll just keep moving forward. Have a good night, everyone.